Hi, everyone. This is Trish Kendall, your host for the Choose and Become interview series. I am excited this morning to have with me my guest, Bree Summers. Bree, will you just say hi really quick?
Hi, everyone.
So Bree and I should have just already been recording. And actually, what she and I spent time together on Friday last week. And I thought, oh my gosh, we should be recording this already. So I'm so excited to interview Bree and bring her to my community. I'll just tell you quickly a little bit about her, and then we'll take a step back before we move forward. So Bree Summers, when I think of you, the first thing I think about is the mom that you are to 15-year-old Allana. So I think about you as a mom. I think of you as the women's empowerment voice. You have a voice, a strong voice out there that's empowering women in all industries from all demographics. And oh yeah, by the way, she's also a senior trial lawyer for big law. And that's a whole story in and of itself, that journey. So I'm excited to bring Bree to my community. Let me tell you, for those who are new to this podcast, the way that I run this is, well, first and foremost, I made 5 critical choices on my journey to enduring success, true success, lasting success. I picked up the phone when my sister called, which Bree and I have talked about, which was making a first choice. I committed to a two-way agreement. I built trust in myself and inspired the trust of others. I created community and belonging. And finally, the 5th choice, the most important choice, is I chose and choose to embrace my boundless capacity to give love and to receive love. So in this podcast, I interview people I admire, and I bring their voices and lessons and experiences to my community and theirs. So, okay, I'm done talking. I've talked too much. Bree, will you share a little bit about yourself to my community who has not met you yet?
Sure. Thanks, Trish. I am Bree Summers. I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I am a mom to my 15-year-old Allana. She is homeschooled currently. She's taking classes at Liberty University, and she is everything I'm not. So she's the creative. She is amazing at art. She loves to sing. She wants to try out for American Idol or The Voice soon. So
Oh my God, that's amazing. I used to be
yeah.
addicted to both of those shows.
Exactly. I know. I grew up on that. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because she started at School of Rock, which is like a school that does voice lessons and concerts, and they switch up the different genres they do every quarter. And so she started last year, and she went from shy kid that had a great voice but was afraid to share her voice, and now is walking out on the stages and is so confident. And so she is the artsy one of us, and she is the outspoken one. And it's just so funny because I have no artistic ability. I can't sing very well. I love school and I love, what I do, but she is the opposite. She definitely does not want to be a lawyer. She told me that's not for her. And she doesn't want to go to a ton of school. So it's just so funny how we're polar opposites, but it's been such a blessing to be her mother. And she came up with me through this journey. I had her right after high school, and she has come with me through undergrad and law school and now big law. So we've kind of grown up together. It's funny. People compare us to the Gilmore Girls, and I think that's very
Wait,
accurate.
I love the Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
Lily watched all the seasons too. My 14-year-old. Oh my gosh, that's super cute.
It is. We're friends. We're in a way because we really grew up together, but it's been so great being her mother. And so that's first and foremost who I am. I think I do some advocacy, and I know we'll probably talk about that later, but this is kind of recent. I was diagnosed with ADHD a couple years ago and have started to try to advocate for people with ADHD, especially women who are late diagnosed like I was. So enjoy advocating for and mentoring minority attorneys, especially. And then a lot of single moms. So I'm really active in the single moms group at our church. And then in my free time, I am a senior trial attorney looking to make partner in the next couple of years, actually in a transition between 2 firms right now. So a lot going on, but all good.
You have a ton going on. And so I will say this just maybe to put a little more context to how you and I met. So Bree and I really just connected weeks ago. I have my months totally, like my time frame is totally wacky, but about a month ago, I delivered a speech, a seminar for a conference for women attorneys, and Bree was there, but we did not meet. We didn't meet afterwards.
No.
But because afterwards I was on LinkedIn and I had connected with some of the attorneys there. And so I would tag them and I would tag the firm. And all of a sudden I saw you on LinkedIn and I saw a post. And again, this might have been 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, because you and I are on it. We're like,
It
and
happened really.
all of a sudden I saw I heard your voice. I saw your voice specifically around ADHD, specifically around single moms. And immediately I reached out to you and said, please, please, will you spend time with me? So that's just a little bit of how we met.
Yeah. It's crazy that we didn't actually meet in person at Boca. I look back and, we were going from one event to the other, but funny how we were able to reconnect. And I'm actually really glad hearing your story. It was just so inspirational. And so I didn't get that, at Boca. You weren't talking about your background and your story. So it was great to find out more and learn more about you through LinkedIn.
You were awesome. Bree and I are going to have a part 1 and a part 2 and a part 3. So don't worry, there will be a sequel to this. Bree very much in a very short period of time knows and embraces my philosophy around enduring success. We all have our own definition of success. And so what I'd like to start with is for you, Bree, where you're at in your journey, what does enduring success mean to you?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think that definition has changed a lot in the last few years, especially this year, just kind of thinking about where I want to be in the next few years. I'm a couple years away from becoming partner. And for a while, I really defined success by what I did. And now I kind of look at it and it's right now I'm actually in between firms and I am technically unemployed, although I am starting work at another firm.
We're giving yourself a week.
Yes, I gave myself. Yes, exactly. Thinking about that and preparing for this podcast, I was thinking what happens if this all goes away, or if I decide not to stay in law? Does that define me? Is my legacy going to be tied to how many cases I won, how many clients liked me? And then I really realized that's not what I want to be known for. For me, enduring success looks like being successful in what you want to do, whether that's for me, breaking glass ceilings or overcoming adversity or, being a great mom to my daughter. And then reaching back and helping out the people behind you, being that example setter, but not just stopping there, also sponsoring and mentoring. And it's actually what I'm most passionate about. I love what I do as far as work goes, but I really mentored there's only 2% of Black women lawyers in big law. And so, for a while, my goal was to break that glass ceiling and become a partner. And I'm not there yet, but mentoring others who feel very alone being a Black woman lawyer or first generation, even with the single moms that I mentor, letting them know you can do this, you can go to college and be a good mom and balance everything. Break the cycle of generational poverty or generational trauma and kind of showing them how while I'm still learning. And I learned, I always thought I needed to arrive somewhere to be able to help others. And then, once I become partner, I can do that. Or once I am wildly successful, but realizing as I'm learning, just like being a mom to Allana, I'm still learning how this all works and how to do that. But I can also teach her along the way and we can learn from each other's mistakes. We can motivate each other. We can rely on each other for different things. And I try to do that a lot with the people that I mentor, letting them know, what, I did make mistakes and it's okay. And you can still get there. So I think that is what I want my legacy to be, is that, she wasn't perfect, but she tried her best. And she also brought along people and helped them, set them for success.
This is awesome. Along the journey, not this is the destination here, because their destination is going to be different than yours.
Exactly.
Right. So taking them along their journey, along your journey, I think is it's just a powerful way to think about it, because is there ever really a destination? I don't know.
It moved a lot. I realized that because I wanted to, finish law school, got a big law job. And then, that was not enough.
Huge successes.
Yeah.
Right. Major successes for anyone let alone the challenges and adversity that you had to overcome, which we will get into. So keep going. I interrupted you.
You
But that's
know,
just like a small thing.
and it's
Shoot.
funny because I'm a recovering perfectionist, and so for me, I would just gloss over that and go to the next thing. I'm learning to celebrate victories more and reflect on them, but for a while, it was always like, what's the next destination? And I wasn't enjoying the journey. I was just like, how do I get to the next thing? And then, the goalposts constantly move because I was a perfectionist, and it's like, okay, then I'll make partner. Then what? Well, will I have the biggest book of business, or will I want to be the head of a practice group or the head of a firm? And so, it gets to the point where you're just constantly striving and not really enjoying the journey. And so I'm really trying to change that about myself. And even reflecting over my career at my last firm, it's like, you know what? You did do a lot of things. You didn't become partner and you weren't there yet, but that doesn't mean that all of the steps along the journey aren't things you should be celebrating. So I'm a work in progress, but that's my goal. Is to do better.
Okay. In the spirit of taking steps, the first critical choice I made on my journey was to make a first choice. So for me, that was picking up the phone when my sister called, which was profound. But since then, I've made practical first choices. Will you share with us a first choice that you made that impacted your journey to enduring success?
So I thought about this and I thought there was one moment, I think I shared that with you, but then kind of reflecting, I think there were actually two. The first one is that I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer from like age 8. And I stuck with that. I doubled down when my parents said, you know what, most women lawyers here, like you argue so much and you could be a lawyer. And so my parents were like, you might as well get paid for all this arguing you're doing. And so I got that idea in my head. And then I watched Erin Brockovich and saw that he was making an impact. And it's funny because when I was 8, I didn't know this, but I ended up being a single mom and, kind of going through things that she went through, like bringing your kids into the office and like staying up late nights and doing all kinds of crazy things. But I think my commitment to that really helped me through a lot of my most trying times in my life. Because I would reflect back and it's like, this is what I wanted to do. I can do it. Like I would keep repeating that to myself. And that's how I made it through so many difficulties, adversities. But I think you and I have a similarity in that I also had a very dramatic time in my life where I had to make like that decision that night. For me, it was leaving a toxic relationship with my daughter's father. I was newly 18 and my ex was 24. And kind of a little bit of a backstory, I grew up in a household where my mom was very young when she had us. She was there for us, but she was going through a lot of her own stuff with like depression and anxiety. And then on my dad's side, he was very much like militaristic and perfectionist, and you had to get straight A's and you had to be the best in basketball and all of these things. And I would never meet his standard of approval. Between the two of them, I really struggled with self-worth, anxiety, depression. And so when I was 17, I ended up meeting my daughter's father, who was 24, promised me the world, a family, unconditional love, all the things I was seeking for at 17 because of my background. And so I ended up moving in with him and his family, and he actually ended up getting into drugs right after my daughter was born. And so really wasn't home, was out doing different things with different people that he shouldn't have. And so I got to the point where my daughter was 3 months, where I was ready to go back to work because I had taken a couple months off. And I graduated from high school in June on the 17th, had my daughter June 20th, like literally walked across the stage. And then they were like,
Wow.
not have this baby on the stage. Like you're very far along. And so I had her 3 days later and then had the summer off and then started at Montgomery County Community College in September. So when she was 3 months old, I was taking full-time classes and I was just miserable at his house. His mom was an enabler. I was going through, postpartum depression, also 18 years old, trying to figure this all out with not any family support at that time because we were estranged. After I got pregnant, we were even more estranged.
Wow.
My
So
family.
you did not have contact with your parents or they were not there helping you in a positive way.
Right. I didn't really have contact with my dad, and my mom was going kind of through her own like breakup from her fiance. And so I talked to her every once in a while, but I didn't have that support. And then his family was very much like, you need to stay with him, even though he's doing all this stuff, even though he's not home often and being supportive, like you can't leave him in his time of need. And so, I was feeling guilty, but I was just so miserable and my mental health was not doing well. And so I had a friend that I actually lived with in high school for a little bit of time before I had my daughter. And she said, you know what, if you can get yourself out of that situation, you can stay with us here. We don't have much, but we'll make it work. And so that was, I think, September of 2009, because my daughter was 3 months old. And I just remember I didn't have anything. I was literally living in his house with his parents, and I had some clothes. He had a crib and a diaper bag. And so I threw my clothes in a duffel bag. I packed her diaper bag and I threw it all in my 93 old Cutlass Supreme that was barely functioning at the time. And I remember it was like almost like one of those movies where, it's raining, it's dark. I'm making this decision. I pack her up and we drive to my friend's house. And when we get there, she has a double bed and she takes one mattress off and that's my mattress. And then we have one of those aerobic exercise steps that we flip
Yes.
over and
Yes.
we pad with blankets for my daughter. And that's her little, because I didn't have a crib. I didn't have a pack and play. I had to leave all of that behind. And so we just made it work. And I started working overnight at Wawa because at 18, I was still going to school, but I couldn't afford childcare. So her mother would watch my daughter overnight while I worked the night shift at Wawa. And then at 6 a.m. when I walked through the door, would hand my daughter back over, who was not ready for a nap at that point when I
Oh
was
God. Right.
exhausted from working an
Yeah.
overnight shift.
Little 3-month-old Allana didn't
Yeah.
understand how to cooperate in this situation.
No, not at all. And we made that work for a year. My friend's mom would stay up with her. Um, I would come and watch her, like play with her, interact with her. During her nap times, I would do my homework from the community college. Then I'd go to bed at like 8 or 9 when my friend's mom was ready to take her back and sleep for a few hours so I could be up for my 11 o'clock shift at Wawa. And so I'm not sure, looking back, I'm not sure how we made it work for as long as we did. It was survival mode, but yeah, that's what we did for the first year of her life until she could get to daycare.
Oh my, I mean, so I am so appreciative that you gave me more details around the first choice because, well, maybe a couple things that come to my mind. One is your strength, your inner strength. Any first choice sometimes is difficult to make. That's why people stay stuck. You know, it's like people say, don't make the choice because of all the reasons that we know that makes it so hard. Yours was especially difficult to make that choice, yet you did.
Yeah.
Is there even a memory or being cognizant of that? I know it's hard, but I am doing this and I'm doing this now. Or did you just were you cognizant of the difficulty of it and that you did it anyways? What made you not stay stuck is going to be my question. Where countless stories are the opposite.
I think a couple of things. I think I shared this with you on Friday, but some of my favorite lyrics from Tracy Chapman are, you can either leave tonight or live and die this way. And it's funny because I did think of that. I was thinking, like, what does this look like in 5 years? Am I going to be proud to tell my daughter that I stayed somewhere where I'm not being valued? I am in really bad, like, mental health. And knowing my ex, I knew that I probably wouldn't have stayed in school and I probably wouldn't have aspired to become a lawyer because, he was really comfortable. And after a while, I think he was a little intimidated by the fact that I was, trying to make more of myself because he dropped out of high school. He had been in and out of rehab. Before I met him, I didn't know that at the time. He was doing landscaping, but there were a lot of times when he was like, why don't you just skip class or skip this assignment so we could do this? And I could feel my resolve kind of fading.
Yeah.
And I think, again, going back to the very first choice of becoming a lawyer, that always what was in my mind. I was like, this is what I have to do. And I was fortunate. My grandparents told me when I was really young, if you want to get out of your situation, like, school is the answer that'll get you out of poverty. That'll get you out of the generational trauma, like you can set yourself up, but it's going to take sacrifice. It's not going to be easy, but it's delayed gratification and you will get the benefits from that. And so I had all of that in my mind when I was making this choice. I knew it was going to be hard. I will say that I watched my dad. My dad was a single dad and really did raise us for a majority of my life. He worked 2 and 3 jobs. And so, I saw that he could do it and it wasn't easy, but it was doable. And he had 3 of us. So I figured if he could do 3 of us and we were all 2 years apart, then I could probably do 1. And then also from my parents, after I had my daughter, even though we weren't very close at that point, they did say, we wish we would have stayed in school. They did drop out when they had me. I was unplanned and my mom was 20. I think my dad was 27, but they had both left school and they said, you know what, it's so much harder when you wait and it's doable. You can wait till your kids are grown and graduated, but 1, you've been out of it for so long. And 2, you like the status quo, or it's easier to stay in the status quo than to kind of break it. So with all of that in my mind, I knew that if I was going to be able to become a lawyer and go back to school and be successful, that the only way I could do that was to kind of cut off where my situation was and to start new. Because I saw what the writing was on the wall if I stayed with my ex. And
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I will force myself to move forward in this interview and keep going, but I don't want to underserve. I don't know what the right word is. The strength of your awareness that it was the first choice when you were 8 years old that I am going to be an attorney, with the resolve of the strength that shines through you, which then led you to this next critical choice that has changed Allana's life forever. That first choice has created a generational shift and change and transformation that as you know, hits me like a ton of bricks. The last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to move us to the second critical choice, is about your friend and your friend's mom, who you stayed with for a year. So, I don't know if everybody needs a hero. I suspect that most people at some time in their life do, but I don't know that everybody needs a hero, but I know that anyone can be a hero.
Yeah.
And your friend and her mom are the heroes. They are a hero in the story. Like my sister was a hero in my story. Like you chose to leave, they chose to open up their doors. And so to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I didn't really have anywhere else to go and it was a lot. I mean, she was basically the parent. She supplemented my journey as a parent because she was able to be there at night. And I do have a lot of people throughout my story that did what they thought was seemingly small, but really helped join my village and help me take care of Allana and just keep going. And so I'm so blessed to say that I've had.
And I bet that drives some of your inner desire to mentor others through their journey in small but meaningful ways. All right. The second critical choice that I made was to commit to a 2-way agreement. For me, that was when my sister basically physically extricated me from my physical environment in Tacoma, Washington, and she and her husband brought me into their home with their 2 young children. So stakes were pretty high at the state I was in when she brought me into her home. And we entered into a 2-way agreement. And it really was a near contractual agreement. Mm-hmm. What I learned through that agreement, or maybe what I felt through the agreement, was that the power is in committing. Because I committed to it, my actions that first started from, oh my God, I have to do these things, transformed to, I want to do these things. And I've always since then thought about the informal agreements that we enter into all the time. Yeah. So as you've reflected on this, is there a 2-way agreement, informal or formal, that you would share with us? And what did you give? What did you get? And just give us a little perspective on that commitment.
This is a hard one too, because I don't think mine was with a person. So I guess the first one would be on that drive from my ex's house to my friend's house. I was definitely at my lowest point. I had been raised Christian before all of this, but kind of with all of the self-esteem issues and things that came from my childhood kind of strayed from that. And I remember being in the car, again, dark night, rainy, like sobbing, really just stopped and like started to speak to God and basically redevoted my life to him at that point. And I said to him, I understand that I haven't really been closed and I have not been, like standing on my faith as much as I used to. If you deliver me out of this situation, I will dedicate Allana to like raising her in the church and then just dedicate my life to giving back. And I mean, if you're not a person of faith, that might sound weird, but I felt such peace after that. And from like that day forward, I started bringing her to my childhood church. And funny enough, I met a group of single moms who was led by this woman who had been a single mom herself and had become remarried to somebody in the church and then was giving back. Like her kids would watch all of our little kids while we sat and talked about, different things, whether it be divorce or child custody or child support. And a few of them became like lifelong friends. And I really credit that group to getting me through such difficult times because I didn't have insurance. I didn't have the money to go to a counselor. Like they became my support group from the time she was like a year all the way till I still keep in touch with a lot of them today. And so, that was big, getting like back in church, like having that relationship again and finding purpose. And I really credit my church and my relationship with God to that. So that would be definitely number one. And then I've heard other guests say that, but I definitely have this, I guess, two-way agreement with myself. Yeah. Again, going back to that first choice of, this is what you're going to do. Like, no matter what, like, this is going to be your refrain. You're going to become a lawyer. And whatever that means, whatever that looks like, whatever challenges or adversity you face, keep that in your head. And during some of my hardest and darkest times when I felt like I had nothing and I wasn't even sure if I was going to become a lawyer. I mean, I've definitely had rejection and all different things throughout that time. I just kept that promise to myself that you're going to do this. It's going to be worth it. Just keep going. And so I think those two were my agreements.
Beautiful and foundational. And of course, the first one just weaves through your entire life. And I appreciate when I keep thinking about your voice, and I say your voice, I know it's in words on LinkedIn, it's in writing, but I hear you, that you interweave your faith into that. And I appreciate that because it's something to be proud about. And so I appreciate that. And then for either of those agreements, your two-way agreement with God, your faith, and two-way agreement with yourself, I am going to be an attorney. With either of those, after you made the commitment or the agreement, did you ever feel like were there ever things that were, I have to do this? And did those things ever transform to get to do this?
Yeah, I think the agreement with myself is probably the hardest. I will say that you call it strength. I'm very stubborn about good things though. But I think that stubbornness really carried me on because for a while, and it was me just telling myself, you have to do this. And then I had people question, especially I think parts of my family that would question that I was spending so much time working, going to school. And that did come with a little bit of a sacrifice time with my daughter. And, hearing that, and I would question myself and, I would question whether I should just wait and raise her. But then I would hear my parents' voices and my grandparents' voice, like, you have to keep going because if you take a break, it's going to be almost impossible to get back to it.
Yeah.
And so there were times when I would have to weigh, the choices that I was making. There were definitely times where, my daughter struggled with ADHD early on in her childhood. And you would get teachers who would blame the fact that me and her dad were separated or the fact that I was working and going to school full time. And I did start to question whether I was the reason why she was struggling with these things. And thankfully I had my support group and then just that promise to myself that this is what was going to happen. And then also I felt that with my faith and my relationship with God, a lot of doors were opening that there's no other explanation in my mind why they would open, or different people that would reach out to me who didn't even know me and would encourage me, things like that kept me going. And so it became a little bit easier, but I would be lying if I didn't say sometimes I still wonder, you know, did I make the right decision? Is my daughter gonna end up all right? You know, things that I think a lot of people go through, but when you're kind of doing it on your own, it feels isolating. And for a while, I didn't realize that other people felt the same way I did.
Oh my gosh. And as a mom, I don't know if we ever will feel like we did it all right.
Yeah.
I used to, so I'm totally going to just give you a little Trish and Lily story off this interview path. So, my message is giving and receiving love. Like in the end, that's what I'm all about, which is why one of the reasons you and I connected so strongly. And there was a time, this was a number of years ago, Lily might have been 8 and Sam might have, I don't know, been 5 or 6 or something, however old difference he is with Lily. And Lily and I got into a rip roaring fight. And my anger, I go from calm and I feel like the best mom in the world to losing my crap in like less than 60 seconds. And I was screaming at the devil. And Lily's like, Mom, you're supposed to talk to people about love.
Oh my God. That's the mouth of babes. My daughter does that all the time.
Right. And it's like,
they listen. They know what you're saying. They listen to you.
do.
And then, but that they pick the hardest times to
But
give
it was
you your own advice back. But yeah,
but it was awesome because it was like immediately. So there are so many times that I have gone to bed at night going, man, I messed up today. Like, how do I not mess up tomorrow? And I think that's part of embracing being a mom, being a parent, but I am going to say, especially being a mom, because I think that there is a difference. You've led me to the third critical choice because I think you have probably consistently in your life learned how to build trust in yourself. And that was the third critical choice that I made, was to build trust in myself first, because I had same thing when we talk about growing up. There was no infrastructure of trust. It was actually the opposite of that.
Yeah.
The removal of trust. So I had to learn how to trust myself, and then I could inspire the trust of others.
Mm-hmm.
For me, trust came from doing the little things. I couldn't even wrap my arms around big, huge things of trust. It was like, oh, my first job, show up on time.
Yeah.
I say I'm gonna do this, I do it. So it was really, trust was in the little things. Will you take us on your journey and tell us how you learned to build trust in yourself? And if you have any like micro examples that you think about and do, share those too, because I find that the young women around us love those micro examples.
Yes, I don't think I've arrived there yet. I'm still struggling to build trust in myself. I think with my upbringing, again, my dad was very, militaristic. What he said went, and there was no questioning. You were not allowed to question. You were not welcome to talk back to whatever was said or communicate in any way that would be seen as challenging him. And because of that, I did follow everything he said and didn't make a lot of my decisions for myself. When I finally started making decisions for myself, like, kind of getting away from them and building my own family or choosing, partners, I would say I made a catastrophic choice, one that I don't regret. Got my daughter from it, and it really built, my journey. And I think God can use anything that you do for good. But I didn't have experience with a lot of things in the outside world. Like I never knew anybody who had addiction in my family, or at least the kind of addiction that my ex had with hardcore drugs. And so I kind of trusted everything that he said and did, and was just shocked when, he started going into drugs and started cheating and things like that. I was blindsided to the point where I really had PTSD because I had to look back and see where I missed so many critical, like, red flags that I wasn't catching on about. And so, when I made that choice, and, it took me a little bit to rebuild from that to get to a point where I had a stable job and was able to balance everything. And my mental health really took a toll. And I think like that scared me so much that when I finally start making my own choices, I'm choosing these things that are not, good for me. And I just felt blind in some of the choices because I didn't realize like how it would turn out. It was so shocking. And so that really led me to start picking friends that I ended up being codependent with. And so I would seek their advice in all different ways. And before I made any critical choices, I had 3 different people that I would check with to make sure it was a good choice. And sometimes, they wouldn't understand, or they, were intimidated, or they just didn't see my journey and the way that I saw it. And so they'd give me advice that was a little like to the contrary of what I believed. But I would always question my gut. And it's funny because I have friends now who will remind me my gut's never been wrong. It's when I override that. And I tend to do that. I tend to override my gut and just not trust myself. And so I do the opposite. And generally, I finally come back to making the choice that I should have made, which was what my gut was telling me to make all along. And it works out. But it still takes me a while. And I still do go to when I have critical choices that need to be made. I think the way that I started doing better about that is, when I would be told by, a well-meaning friend who would say, maybe you should take a break. Maybe you shouldn't be doing all this. I think my first choice started overriding that. I realized that I had to kind of break from what they said and that it would turn out all right. And I started to see that, a pattern of that, and started to, trust myself and not go to as many people and just make the choice and realize it'll still work out no matter what. And then seeing that time and time again, I think I realized that, I can start to trust myself. And so for an example, I think I posted this on LinkedIn, but I had a job where I was a law clerk going through law school, and all of the clerks that were ahead of me were allowed to leave and go do a summer internship at a job where they would, eventually be hired after law school. And when it was my turn, staffing turned out where I was the most junior, and they said that they couldn't allow me to go do the internship, but they also couldn't offer me a job after school. So I had the choice to go and take the chance of myself. And if I did well in the internship, I'd be set, or, stay, and there would not be any next steps, but I would at least have a job through the rest of my law school career. And so I decided to go and take that chance on myself, and thankfully it worked out. And actually the money I made that summer was enough where I didn't have to worry about working my last year. So I didn't have to worry about the fact that they weren't going to let me come back from the summer. But think like little things like that, where I started to take a chance on myself and not question everything, and just realizing, what, no matter what, this will all work out. Like, I don't think that you can mess up God's plan for you. I think, sometimes you take a longer way, or maybe not the most direct path, but I still think that sets you up. And even that choice or that mistake or whatever happens can be an example for somebody else.
And you do take risks. I mean, you are like, I wouldn't have thought of introducing you as a risk taker, but because you have an analytical and logical thinking to you. But that is another example of the seemingly easier or safer choice would have been to stay, stay there instead of take that internship. So, okay. So you have built trust by listening to your gut. Listening to your gut, you do the gut check. And then the other thing I want to pull from that for people to listen to is reflecting on the times in which you have listened to your gut and it has turned out, and that builds trust. And so, like, if we just take a moment to reflect on our journeys and remember that we are equipped to make really important, good decisions because we have before. So I appreciate that, the reflection aspect of it. I want to stay on trust for a minute. And I'm thinking about you even professionally in your professional world, because I think oftentimes people might think, I'm an attorney, or I'm a litigator, I'm a trial lawyer, but does it require building trust with everyone around you? Like the partners that you work with, the clients that you will have, your colleagues. There's an essence of creating strong trust-based relationships that support your career. Am I thinking about that right?
That's right. I think, showing up when you say you're going to, doing what you say you're going to, having quality work consistently, that's how you're successful, especially as a trial attorney.
And are there things like, how do you inspire the trust professionally of those around you? So you just gave 2 examples: showing up, doing what you say you're going to do, Is there anything else that just pops in your mind?
I think for me, I am usually the go-to person because I'm a hard worker, and I'm okay with that because that's what I've had to do my whole life. And so I'm happy to, roll up my sleeves when there's like a midnight deadline and get in there and help out with that. Or, I had a weird story, but I had a partner who was supposed to take this deposition of this key witness, and I had helped prep her for it. And she had a violent stomach flu like right before it was supposed to start. And so I knew the outline and I was prepared and I was able to step in, and I otherwise wouldn't have gotten that opportunity. But I will say a lot of opportunities have come to me just by being prepared and being open, like you said, to take, I wouldn't have said it risk, but I think you're right. Taking that risk and saying, you know what, I'm going to try it and it's going to work out, and not expecting, I don't expect myself anymore to be perfect the first time I'm doing things.
Yeah. And you were prepared. It
Yeah.
might seem like a risk, but in fact, it's not, because it wasn't a risk for the senior partner, and it wasn't a risk for you, and it wasn't a risk for the client, because you were so prepared to just step in.
That's true. Preparation is definitely key in everything.
Are you okay if we go a little bit longer?
Yeah.
As I look at the clock. Okay, because I don't want to leave trust yet, because we were talking on Friday. So you're in transition, you've proactively chose another firm for career path, business development and partnership path reasons that work for you. And one of the things we were talking about is being in the office. And here's why I want to bring this up, because I work with lots and lots and lots of, I'll say, younger career associates, whether it's attorneys, accountants, consultants, other areas, for health plans and things. You got it. And, there is an aversion to being in person, because that's just, things have just become that.
Yeah.
And I am a big believer, and this is the maybe older woman in me coming out, but that trust is built in informal, spontaneous, professionally intimate moments. And you were saying that on Friday, like hallway conversations.
Yeah.
Being in the office. So give us your perspective of being with people, being in person in your career.
So I think it's interesting. I started my first year as a lawyer in 2018. So it was before the pandemic, and there was no virtual working at all. Like you had to be there. And I think I was fortunate to have started before the pandemic, because I did start, building credibility and building relationships. I did become the go-to person, so that when the pandemic hit, I didn't have to worry about work because people knew where to find me. It was hard for me because I was having to homeschool my daughter alone while this was all going on. So I was thankful for the flexibility, and I still am today. But, starting this new job next week, I have already planned that I'm going to be in full time until I start to get, a sense of the culture, the relationships, because I do think there is benefit to going in. I don't think you need to be in 5 days a week, but I do think, there are all kinds of spontaneous things that happen in the office, especially when partners are in and you're working with the partners in the same office. I know that's not always the case because I've worked with people in other offices, but, there were times when I'd be on a client call or, a mediation, and I'd stop by the partner's office after and we would do a download, and then, there might be other assignments because we were going back and forth and talking about the case, and I'd get more assignments that way. Or, a partner would walk through the halls and say, hey, we have an observational opportunity, come sit in my office, or like, let's go run to court. And not saying that, partners can't schedule that ahead of time and, you be on a call or a Zoom and that still happen. But I think partners are just so busy that sometimes it does slip their mind. And when they see you, they're like, oh, wait, I forgot that you were in, or I didn't realize you'd be here, and this just came up. So I think there's a benefit to being in, but I also will say the ADHD advocate in me says, there are definitely times when it's beneficial for me to stay home because I get distracted easily, or, I have to write a brief, and it's just easier to have that, to cut down on the commute for me because I'm an hour out from my office.
Wow.
But then also to be able to like take breaks and not be sidetracked, or be able to just hyper focus on something and not have somebody like stop by your office, because it takes, especially people with ADHD, a lot longer to get back on track and focused. And so I do appreciate the flexibility. I know my office is 3 days in and then 2 days at home. And I think that that's good. I think a lot of the firms are like that.
Yeah.
But I do think, being at home completely, you do miss some of those things, especially as you're more junior. There's a lot of mentorship opportunities that don't happen because the partner is really, really busy and they have a quick phone call with you, or like, they don't even think to do it. They'll put it in an email, and there's just some things that are missed by not having people that come in.
Well, thank you for letting me go down that path a little bit, because I think it is front and center, not only for those younger career associates that are finding their way, but for leadership who's trying to help them find their way.
Yeah.
The fourth critical choice I made, and you already touched on it earlier, was to create community and belonging. I grew up without any sense of belonging for my own reasons. One being we moved, I went to 12 different schools before I graduated high school. We actually fled, and we never left during the summer. Like, I always think about that. I was like, why couldn't we have moved during the summer? It was when I was in my early phase. I think I was 30 when I intentionally said, I'm going to choose to create my community. And then, my story with my marathon girls who are still incredibly close to me, which is what you said about your community from church and those friends and moms. I don't want to lead the witness. But will you share with us the different communities that have supported your journey to success? And then I also want to get a little bit into belonging.
Sure. I, like you, didn't really feel like I belonged when I was a kid. And it's not because we moved, because grew up in Montgomery County in the suburbs of Philly, and have been there ever since. I think for me, there was a little bit of a difference in how my dad wanted to raise us and the type of kid that I was. My dad was very much into sports. He actually had a basketball scholarship to go to Boston University, and then blew out his knees in high school back when they really couldn't do much about it. And so I think a lot of my childhood was, him coaching all of our sports teams and us being in sports, sometimes even taking priority over school. And for me, I was the quiet kid. I loved reading books. I would literally take a book out to recess and just sit there and read. Didn't have a lot of friends, and the ones I did have were in the reading Olympics with me. So we were all kind of socially awkward and but loved to learn. I did develop some friendships, and I guess my dad liked the fact that, being on teams, you do have that community, but it just wasn't who I was. I was good enough at sports, but that wasn't my first love. And so I was also really different because I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger, and didn't realize that some of my social awkwardness and not picking up social cues and talking super fast and all the other things, I was different because of that, but didn't realize that there was a name for it. So I just always thought I was just the socially awkward kid that was really smart, but that was it. And that was even through high school. And then with undergrad and law school, I was a mom and I was working full time, and I didn't really have time to go to the bar after class or whatever. I was trying to rush back and see my kid before bedtime. So I didn't really have a lot of friends there, but through the church, that was my first little community. And then in law school, I met who is now my best friend now. She sat next to me in law school. She was a single mom, and she had gone back to school. So she was in her 40s, and we sat next to each other, and we just started talking about, our backgrounds with being a single mom and working and all of that. And we ended up developing a friendship. To this day, she's my go-to person. So, and she also wasn't somebody who could go to the bar after class or whatever. So we would study together or just check in through texts and things like that. I think, like you, I actually didn't start developing a really strong friend group until I turned 30. Being at a law firm, I started to make a lot of friends that way. But I do think it came with me being more confident in myself. Also, the diagnosis was really helpful. Because I really understood myself better and why I did the things I did and how I could still, participate in a friend relationship, but do it in a way that wasn't as awkward. I wasn't cutting people off. I was able to manage a lot of my symptoms a little bit better. And so I kind of became a part of two friend groups. One was a bunch of African-American attorneys and staff at my firm. And we would just kind of bond over what it was like to be a minority at the firm. And even though two of us have left the firm, we all keep in touch. We have monthly gatherings. We just had a Friendsgiving. But we are in like, a group chat daily, just
So are
talking
you
about
you're geographically near each other that you could
yeah.
have a Friendsgiving?
We're all in
So,
the Philadelphia area, and
ah,
we still all work at firms. Most of the group still works at Duane Morris, but
yeah.
two of us have left now. But we are able to even talk more about our current firms and like just the state of big law and things like that. But we bond over like so much, and it's been so refreshing because I feel like sometimes you have to be one way at a firm and kind of put a mask on, and you're just there to kind of like do
Mhm.
your job. With this group, I really feel like I can open up about anything. There's no judgment, and so that's been like a safe space for me. And then there's another group I have with women who are still at Duane Morris, but just talking about what it's like being senior associates and like what we want to do for partnership or where we see ourselves in 5 years. And so kind of relatedly, but also, it's another group where I can just ask questions about law or
Yeah.
just about what it's like to be a, you know, 30 something woman. All of us are single. So we kind of go through that too. And so both of those groups for different reasons have just really grounded me and have made me feel supported in this later chapter of my career.
Yeah. And you answered this a little bit, but I want to get very pointed with the question.
Sure.
And I'm going to start with the negative and then go to the positive. What does it feel like to not belong?
I feel it's really isolating. I felt like I was very misunderstood, and not valued or celebrated for who I was. I only really felt like I was valued or celebrated if I tried to fit into certain groups, which I could do pretty well. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
coming from a very culturally mixed family, and then, having, parents that were working class. I felt like I was good at fitting in certain aspects, and then I could turn that off and then, go to a professional event and be able to do that. But I felt like nobody actually saw me for who I was. It was just however I was able to fit in or whatever masks I were able to wear for the events.
And now, almost like the chameleon mask,
Yeah.
this is how I should be. And so therefore, this is how you will. That's draining.
Yeah.
That's draining. Now, contrast that. So you gave three different examples of communities where you have together created a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And so how does it feel when you do belong?
It's really refreshing because I don't have to wear a mask. I can be who I am, and I'm valued for that. And I can be open. Don't feel like I'm judged, where I feel like a lot of times, being an associate and definitely being a minority associate with a disability, it always feels like I'm being judged. But
Mhm.
these people know who I am without the mask. And when I'm super hyperactive, they understand that. And that is actually celebrated because I am different, but in a good way. And I just feel like I can just let my hair down and just be who I am. And it's just so good to have a safe space because, again, being a minority in the world, but in big law, I feel like it's really hard and it is really draining. And you just need that place where you're just like, okay, I'm over everything today. And, like tomorrow you can encourage me and I'll get back on the horse. But today was not a good
Don't
day. And
encourage me today.
yeah, just let me vent. And, and they
I love it.
understand because they've all been there in
I
different
love
ways.
it. And now you are, and then I'll get off it and move to our final fifth most important choice. But now you are creating a community with your voice and your effort around ADHD and late diagnosed ADHD and ADHD within women. And then you just keep, you keep like, it's not just ADHD, it's within women. And then in big law. I mean, it is mind boggling to me. I mean, because I follow you and I read everything, and then I find myself kind of going in a hole with researching, like what you posted this morning
Yeah.
about the difference between girls and boys. You were born Breeana, but if you would have been born Brian, ADHD would have been diagnosed earlier on.
Yeah.
So not to go down that path, but you're now creating a community for other women to feel a sense of belonging with it. Keep doing it.
And it's just as helpful to me because hearing other people's experiences and even things that they've done to help cope, it's like, we all learn from each other. And so people always say, well, you really helped us and we were diagnosed because of you and all of that. But it's like, I remember what it was like to not have been diagnosed and just thought there's something wrong with me. And so I see myself in them and, helping them feel seen it feels good for me. It just feels like I didn't waste all these years, kind of struggling and questioning myself and having low self-worth. And, if I can help somebody to not have to go through that, I'm always happy to do it. And it actually makes me feel encouraged.
Which goes back to your definition of enduring success.
Yeah.
And mentoring people while you're on your journey through their journey. I sometimes wish I start with the last choice instead of saving it for last. For me, the fifth choice that I made on my journey is the most critical and important choice. And that is to fully embrace giving all of the love that I have. Like, I feel it, I have it, but I spend so much time withholding it. So giving love, the verb, the action, not the emotion, but the verb, giving you my love and receiving the love that others want to give me, not doing this, which took me a very, 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 very long time to get to. And even today, sometimes I check myself on it. When you think about your journey, is there a time in which you will share with us that you consciously chose to give all of your love, the verb, and what did that feel like?
I think for me, weirdly, I actually didn't have a problem with giving. In fact,
Oh, yeah, go to receiving. Sorry, I
yeah,
interrupted
I was
you.
gonna say,
Keep going. Hold on.
I struggled with giving myself love, but I gave everybody else that in hopes that I would receive it. But then I don't think I did a good job of receiving it. I'm still the person who does not like when people compliment me or talk about like the achievements that I've done. And I think it goes back to trust for me. Like, I felt like I had to earn people's love because I didn't trust them. I didn't trust them to give it to me, without having to earn it. And I didn't trust that people wouldn't withhold it if they found either something wrong with me or they were upset with me. Because again, the way I grew up was you had to earn, love. And in order to keep it, you had to keep performing and be whoever, my parents thought I should be. And so kind of growing up, I would attract people who were like that, and they would only give me love if I was fixing them or being their psychologist or whatever I had to do to earn it. And then for whatever reason, once they were upset or they weren't getting what they wanted, they would just withhold it. And so for a while, I would say that I was really good at receiving it, but it didn't show in the relationships that I was in, especially because even a lot of my friend choices when I was in my early 20s, it was all codependent. It was people who wanted to fix me, but in return, like, I had to be indebted to them forever. And so I realized that I wasn't picking good friends until I met my friend in law school, because she was, judgment free. She just loved me for me. She encourages me. She's constantly like, you know what, I can't wait to go to your partnership celebration. I've already decided that I'm going to have 2 pieces of the cake at that celebration. And she tells me that all the time. And then she's like, and then next, like, there's no doubt in my mind you're going to be head of litigation at your new firm. Like, and she just speaks this into me. And for a while, it just felt weird, and I just would brush it off and be like, okay, this just doesn't feel normal, because it wasn't my normal. And then she really did help me, start to love myself and believe in what she's saying, and then be able to receive it from other people who want to give it to me. And I think, for a while, I didn't realize that a relationship needs to be giving and receiving. I would just give it, give it, give it. And then people would say, but we're trying to give it back because that's an actual relationship. It makes us feel good to do it too. But if you won't receive it, then we're not in a relationship. This is one-sided. And I didn't really think about that people actually want to give me their love, and it makes them feel good about it. And it makes them feel like they're in a 2-way relationship instead of just one way. Because I was always giving, giving, giving. And it almost was like fixing in a way.
You articulated this in a way that I haven't before. So I appreciate this. And the 2-way relationship. I want to go to your friend and pull out how she gave you love, because there are so many times people will say at first glance, oh, giving and receiving love, that's love, the emotion, that's soft. But I'm talking about tangible things. She verbally said to you, at your partnership celebration, I've already decided I'm going to have 2 pieces of cake. That is a tangible manifestation of giving love to you. It's like an affirmation,
Yeah.
So not only encouragement, but the actual manifestation of the words she used to encourage you. That is giving love. And now you choosing to receive that from her actually is a gift to her.
Yeah.
Because you receiving that fully from her, and you have a major trust with her, so it's natural to do now.
Yeah.
But you're actually giving her a gift, because it feels so good when we give all of our love.
Yeah. Yes. And it took a while to learn that. It was not natural, but I see it now. And she's my person in so many ways. I mean, when I decided to start homeschooling my daughter, she's like, you know what? I work from home. I have teenagers, like, send her over. And so she's been, in so many ways, will just step in and become part of the village I always reference, where it's like, I don't have another parent for my daughter because he's not involved, but I have all these people who just love her so unconditionally that she doesn't, not that she doesn't miss her dad, but that she doesn't feel like she's missing that love too. And so
She's
also,
got a major community. And then Allana creates her own community too. Okay, I will wrap this up. So first and foremost, Bree, thank you for just immediately choosing to give me your love, all of it. When I LinkedIn messaged you, and then we're like rapidly emailing each other or LinkedIn, you watched my TEDx right away. You shared your story with me, and then you said yes immediately and prioritized your calendar to spend this time with me. And that's giving your love to me, and I am receiving all of it. And choosing this as a platform to share more of your story, which is in support of your enduring success by helping others on their journey. But it's also a big choice to do that.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that we connected and I got to see your story, and you're just as inspiring. So I so appreciated when you reached out to me.
Well, I believe with my whole heart of hearts that, first off, each of us wants to create lasting success. We each want to feel that lasting, true success, that enduring success. And I believe with everything in me, and I'm proof that, and Bree is proof that we create enduring success and fuel the success of those around us by choosing to embrace our boundless capacity to give love and to receive love. And if we just show up in every interaction with our fellow human being with that choice, then we will automatically make a first choice. We will commit to two-way agreements. We'll build trust, and we'll create community and belonging. So maybe our shout out to the community is that, the next time you're interacting with somebody informally or formally, just think about the choice that you make in that interaction and how you can help inspire and fuel their journey to enduring success. Thank you, everybody, for being along this journey with me. Choose and become. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendall.com/podcast, or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. Choose and become.